Hey everyone, what does manufactured meat and Ohio train derailment have in common? Well, let's take a look here. Ohio train derailment, latest East Palestine residents remain fearful. Feds pledge more help. Yeah, right. Senator EPA visit Ohio train derailment, says rail company should be held accountable. More than 2 weeks after a train derailment near the Ohio-Pennsylvania border, releasing toxic chemicals into the ground and water, residents are still reeling with uh, uncertainty. Officials are pledging to address growing health concerns, and federal agencies are expected to announce additional assistance. Doubt it. While the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the National Transportation Safety Board continue to investigate incident, residents of East Palestine, Ohio, have complained about headaches, skin rashes, in addition to environmental fears. The federal agencies maintain that the air and water are safe after officials prompted a controlled release of vinyl chloride to prevent the explosion following the derailment on February 3rd. But the potential and unknown long-term effects from the toxic chemicals remain a growing fear among East Palestine residents. Officials are also monitoring chemical levels in areas along the Ohio River to determine the river's water intake. Amid several lawsuits claiming negligence against Norfolk Southern Corp, federal officials are setting up a clinic in East Palestine to address the medical needs of residents. You know, if somebody breathes that in or takes that stuff in, ain't nothing they can do about it after the fact. National figures and federal agencies were also set to visit the village of nearly 5,000 to provide additional assistance. By what I understand, these people, this was a poor area. It doesn't surprise me one dang bit. Fact check. Ohio train derailment, fact check. What's true and what's false? I already know what's true. The government don't care. East Palestine residents remain frustrated amid safety concerns. Palestine residents remain scared and frustrated over the train derailment that spread thousands of gallons of toxic chemicals in the area. I don't blame them. In search of answers, residents have gathered for a meeting with East Palestine Mayor Trent Conway in Norfolk Southern on February 15th, but the rail operator had pulled out of the meeting at the last minute, expressing concern for the safety of its employees. With lack of answers, fears only grow. The deeper fear, residents say, it is about what happened when the broken train cars hauled away and the TV cameras are gone. When residents returned from evacuation after being told it was safe, they began to develop sickness, rashes, and headaches. Thousands of dead fish were found in surrounding creeks, according to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. And in some areas, the water is covered with film. Despite officials maintaining that the water is safe to use and that residents are able to return to their homes safely. The East Palestine community has been reluctant to accept an all clear given the symptoms they face. I don't blame them. Maybe whatchamacallit, a link if you want to read the rest of that, but here's the difference. Well, there ain't no difference. This is the comparison. Okay, here we go. California starts up growing meat from animal cells. Future of food. This genetically engineered salmon may hit U.S. markets as early as 2020. I think that's a little bit over. As concerns grow about the sustainability of meat production. Now, what did I just read you? They don't care about that, but they only have got to do this. Some startup companies say they may have solutions growing meat from animal cells in laboratories. NewsHour Weekend's Megan Thompson visited two startups in California producing cell-based meat. This story is part of our Future Food series hosted by Mark Bittman and supported by Pfizer or Pulitzer and supported by the Pulitzer Center. Here's the transcript. With all the concerns about the ethics, environmental impact, and sustainability of meat production, many people are looking for alternatives. I don't think I am. By now, you've all probably heard about the surge in popularity of burgers made solely from plants. I ain't too favorable about that either. Even Burger King, plans to serve one in all of its restaurants. But could it be possible to grow what amounts of real beef chicken in labs with no animals killed in the process? And could such a process actually be sustainable? It may sound like science fiction, but Megan Thompson traveled to California, where a few companies are working to get lab-raised meat on your plate in in the near future. And this report is supported in partnership with the Pulitzer Center. I think
With all the concerns about the ethics, environmental impact, and sustainability of meat production, many people are looking for alternatives. By now, you've probably heard about the surge in popularity in burgers made solely from plants. Even Burger King plans to serve one in all its restaurants. But could it be possible to grow what amounts to real beef or chicken in labs, with no animals killed in the process? And could such a process actually be sustainable? It may sound like science fiction, but Megan Thompson traveled to California, where a few companies are working to get lab-raised meat on your plate in the very near future. This report is supported in partnership with the Pulitzer Center.
In 2005, Uma Valetti was an up-and-coming cardiologist in St. Paul, Minnesota. He'd just finished a prestigious fellowship at the Mayo Clinic and was treating patients with serious heart conditions, all while conducting cutting-edge research.
In my practice in cardiology, I started working on a clinical study that took stem cells of patients that had large heart attacks or cardiac arrests, and we would take those cells and inject them into patients' hearts to regrow the heart muscle. That led me to start thinking, can you just grow food from cells? And once the idea got into my head, it was really impossible to get it out.
Valetti started researching the idea of creating meat in a lab. He'd always been bothered by the environmental impacts of meat production and also the fact that billions of animals are slaughtered for meat each year.
It really started dawning on me that all the pieces of what we needed to do existed in the world, and we had to put it together for this application of growing food.
Valetti walked away from his promising cardiology career and moved his family to the San Francisco Bay Area to pursue the idea of creating what's known as cell-based meat. In 2015, Valetti launched Memphis Meats, one of the first private companies in the world focused on the technology. The next year, Memphis Meats debuted its first product. It tastes like a meatball. Valetti's lab-grown meatballs take only a few weeks to produce. A beef cow, by comparison, takes around 18 months to get to market. Valetti believes his fast-growing meat could help address the issue of increasing demand. With the middle class growing around the world, global demand for meat will double by 2050, according to the UN.
We are at a breaking point where I think if this demand for meat continues in the way it is, there just isn't enough resources for it. That's kind of why I think the crux of the whole thing requires massive innovation.
Valetti also talks about one day creating healthier meats, less likely to cause the heart disease he saw in so many of his patients. Today, Memphis Meats has close to 40 employees and is working on duck and chicken, which Valetti gave me a sample of.
Okay, here I go.
Go for it.
It's very tender. Yeah, there's definitely no way that I would, if you hadn't told me, that I would know this was grown in a lab and it didn't come from a conventionally raised chicken.
It tasted good and even had fibers you'd expect, but the consistency was a little soft. Turns out growing animal cells is one thing, but reproducing the structure of fats, collagen, and blood vessels that give meat its texture is a big technological challenge. Scientists are still experimenting with scaffolds, as they're called, to give the meat structure. And there's another challenge.
When you say to somebody, here's a piece of meat that was grown completely in a lab, some people might say, I'm not so sure about that. How do you get beyond that?
I think we should be realistic, and the industry should be realistic, that you just can't expect everybody to say, yes, I'm behind it. It's going to take time.
Despite the hurdles, Memphis has attracted more than $20 million of investment from big-name backers like Bill Gates, Richard Branson, and the food giant Cargill. Tyson Foods, one of the biggest meat producers in the world, has a minority stake in the company. Executive Vice President Amy Tu oversees Tyson's venture capital fund.
Our focus is on our traditional businesses, but we can't ignore the fact that the consumers are demanding different types of products. We want to be at the forefront of the future of food. So in order to do that, we may be looking at areas that may have been uncomfortable in the past.
Memphis Meats is not the only company now trying to make cell-based meat a commercial reality. In just the last few years, several startups have launched in the U.S. and around the world. The interest is spurred in part by growing concerns about sustainability, as meat production requires more resources than other foods. About 1/4 of the world's ice-free land is used for livestock grazing. About 1/3 of our cropland is used to grow livestock feed. And according to the UN, livestock production contributes almost 15% of the world's greenhouse gases, about the same as transportation.
More people eat meat tomorrow than they are today, and it's a big issue.
Josh Tetrick is the CEO of San Francisco-based food company Just Inc. The company began launching vegan food products in 2013. Its novel items like eggless eggs made from mung beans are available across the U.S. Just Inc. is now trying its hand at cell-based meat.
If there are so many issues with eating meat, then why continue to promote it?
People like eating meat. You know, it's just the way it is. If we can figure out a way to allow them to eat all the meat they want, just a different kind of better meat without all the issues, I just think that's the most pragmatic way to fix a problem.
So this is our early research lab for our cultured meat project.
Biomedical engineer Vitor Santo is Just Inc.'s director of what's known as cellular agriculture. He explained the process starts with a small biopsy of an animal.
It can be from a tiny piece of tissue, a small blood collection.
And the animal then walks away.
Exactly. So in this container we have some of our chicken cells.
The chicken cells feed on a cocktail of proteins, sugars, and vitamins. The process also requires a substance to spur cell growth, often made from the blood of fetal cows. Obtaining this fetal bovine serum is a huge obstacle to scaling up production. It's usually used in medical research, and it's expensive and controversial. It comes from slaughtered pregnant cows, which means for now, some of the cell-based meats made by Just Inc. and other companies aren't actually slaughter-free. Just Inc. is working to create a new plant-based alternative.
We really want to get rid of it for ethical reasons and also because it's very expensive.
Using the current process, it takes Santo about 2 weeks to produce this.
So this is our ground chicken meat, freshly harvested from the tank, the bioreactor where we are growing it.
The meat is used in Just Inc.'s crispy chicken nugget. Another challenge here is the price. This nugget cost about $100 to produce.
You gotta try it.
But CEO Josh Tetrick says the price is falling quickly and that he'll be ready to launch his chicken nugget soon. The issue now is that it hasn't been approved by the government. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration and the Department of Agriculture agreed to jointly oversee cell-based meats.
And we want to be true world leaders on this topic as we have a challenge to feed the world.
But the government has not yet decided how it will approve the products, inspect facilities, or what the rules will be for package labeling. And cell-based meat companies aren't the only ones concerned with that.
We're not against technology whatsoever. We want them just to play by the same rules.
Cattle rancher Kevin Kester says he wants to see the same government inspections of cell-based meat labs that traditional meat facilities get. And he wants it made clear on labels that the meat came from a lab, not from a ranch.
We want a level and fair playing field to where labeling claims and marketing claims are accurate and it doesn't confuse the consumers.
Kester is a fifth-generation rancher raising more than 2,000 head of cattle on about 22,000 rolling acres in central California. Kester has also served as president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. He bristles at the environmental claims that supporters of cell-based meats make about the beef industry.
A lot of people say, it's really resource intensive. It uses a lot of water and a lot of land. What do you say?
A huge amount of that land is not viable for any other production.
Like the land on his ranch, which is steep and rocky.
So the highest and best use is for cattle.
According to the USDA, American cattle production only contributes about 3% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. And Kester says the industry is improving sustainability and efficiency through better breeding and feeds.
With less cattle, I can produce 33% additional pounds of beef because we've improved through technology and genetics what it takes to produce a pound of beef.
Do you think that they'll ever be able to grow a hamburger like this in a lab?
I think
Given enough time and research and development, yes, I do.
And you're okay with that?
I can, sure. It'll be a long time before the majority of, at least the population of the U.S. Would want to eat a lab-grown product.
Even so, some experts say we need to start getting answers now to questions about the safety of these new products.
You know, this is a very disruptive technology, and what are the anticipated risks? We should be thinking about those now rather than being reactive later on and trying to respond to them.
Barbara Kowalczyk is a food safety expert at Ohio State University and sits on the FDA Science Board. Kowalczyk's not opposed to cell-based meat, but says there are a lot of questions the government needs to get answered before it approves the meat for market. Kowalczyk says we can't rule out the possibility of foodborne illness, and she wonders about the long-term health effects of the substances used to make the meat.
And those might be chronic health effects. So they may not emerge until someone's consumed it on a repeated basis. And so it may be years before we would actually be able to see a health impact.
The problem, she says, is that the U.S. doesn't systematically track the health effects of new food products after they're introduced. She thinks cell-based meats should be regulated as biologic drugs. Their approval requires a lot more upfront and follow-up research about their safety.
We haven't stepped back and said, before we embrace this, let's look at the unintended consequences.
Memphis Meat CEO Uma Valetti acknowledges the concerns, but points out conventional meat is one of the biggest sources of foodborne illness, and it's often contaminated during the slaughtering process.
Okay, that's why I bring out about this particular subject, but they don't really care about how much of that vinyl chloride gets into the ground and is all the danger, but yet they care about if a cow, passes gas or something. Oh my God, you're going to die in the next day. They're crazier than a bed bug. But with that said, I just wanted to share that because I heard about them doing that before, and I seen that on this particular news story that California's doing it. So, and plus it bothered me that they didn't care about the poor people in Ohio that much as to, and the government's involved in that, all that crap. Their hands are up to their elbows in it because they wouldn't let them pass the bill they couldn't strike. So, yeah, so anyways, just a bunch of nonsense. But with that said, I'd like to say God bless to everyone. Stay safe. And just keep your head, keep moving. This thing is just driving me nuts. Here we go, maybe. I don't know what the heck's wrong with this thing. Hang on. Beginning to take me off. There. Lord have mercy. But anyway, I don't see why they keep doing this, and they did that with the Ohio train derailment and getting in the ground and burning like, oh man, 150 cars, and that sucker was set on fire, and when it went off, it was a mushroom cloud and there was stuff in the air coming down. So yeah, but they want to sell you that manufactured meat. But with that said, God bless y'all. Sorry for the crazy computer, but take care.